Running out of fish.
Kia ora. Thank you, Mayor. Right, to the next item, item 14. We have Craig and Rachel here to come talk about natural environment and water quality targeted rates annual report. And remember, this is the work program from July 1 last year to June 30 this year. So from the budget onwards, we're not talking about that, we're talking about that whole year. Lots of good, and I think we have a presentation. Yes, kia ora to you both.
Kia ora, thank you for having us. So just as mentioned, we're here to present the Natural Environment and Water Quality Targeted Rate annual reports. And this is part of our commitment to be accountable and transparent for the delivery of these focused funds. And I was just going to mention that in addition to the annual report, because I know it's come up previously, we're also preparing snapshots for each of the local board areas. Here you go. So just a quick recap around both the natural environment and water quality targeted rates. They were introduced in response to public demand to see greater level of investment for the protection and improvement of the natural environment and water quality, in particular consistent swimmability of our beaches and harbour areas. They were introduced in 2018 and were extended for a further 3 years in 2021 through to 2031. The long-term plan 21 to 31 includes $355 million for the natural environment targeted rate and $593 million for the water quality targeted rate. The annual budget, through the annual budget process in 23-24, both of the targeted rates were temporarily reduced, the natural environment targeted rate by 48.8% and the water quality targeted rate by 77.7%. Just honing in on the natural environment targeted rate, this delivers 8 programs focused on improving ecological values of the region, and delivering statutory obligations that are set out in the Biosecurity Act, the Resource Management Act, and also increasing responsibilities that are now required by the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity. It also includes programs that are focused on supporting community-led activity, and you heard this morning from Makari Jenna of the Tūmai Tonga project around the work that they're doing and how the natural environment targeted rate is supporting that both directly but indirectly through working alongside in similar geographic areas to that project. Last financial year, we planned to spend a total budget of 38 million, or just over 38 million. We spent 37. This is actually slightly higher than the collected rate for that year, and that's due to the pulsed nature of some of the work that we do, particularly pest control. It can be cyclical. So, for example, every 3 to 4 years we do a large aerial 1080 operation in the Hanua Ranges, and in that particular year we need an increased level of investment to deliver that program. So it does go up and down a wee bit, and reserves have been used to manage that historically. So just summarising a few of the highlights, and there have been many, so really encourage you to read through the annual report, which goes into some of these in a lot more detail. But some of the key things that we've delivered over the past year have included a baseline survey for Kodi Health across the Hanua Ranges, and that's been delivered in partnership with Iwi Mana Whenua, or Tēnā Here or Kauakua Nui. Over 44,000 hectares of possum control has been delivered across the region, both ground-based and aerial control. The kokako surveys in the Hanua Ranges have shown that pest control work is contributing to the return of our native tonga species, with 259 pairs of kokako counted compared to 55 pairs back in 2015. And we received recognition from the DOC Kokako Recovery Group for this now being the second largest recovery or secure site of kokako nationally, so amazing results there. We've continued eradication of low incidence pest species across the region, particularly in the islands where removing some of these species that we see more widely spread across the mainland is still feasible. So examples of that are Argentine ants on Aotea Great Barrier, but also a number of plant species as well. Our conservation dogs have inspected almost 900 ferry sailings, for signs of pest stowaways, so looking for high-risk movements of materials across to our pest-free islands, and they have successfully intervened on several occasions, detecting the presence of mice and rats, for example, that shouldn't be there. Over 1,300 vessel hulls have been inspected for marine pests as part of our marine biosecurity program, and we've supported over 450 community-led conservation initiatives through both grants and resources, advice and support. And lastly, over 80,000 trees have been planted by youth across both our parkland and vulnerable riparian areas. I'm now going to pass to Craig to comment on the water quality targeted rate.
Thank you very much, Rachel. So that's just a graphic, not dissimilar to the Rachel's graphic, just identifying the different program areas and our key activities in those program areas. And I'd just like to highlight, particularly around the Western Isthmus and the Eastern Isthmus, the very close connectivity we have with Watercare on delivering their big infrastructure projects as well. These are all the old combined areas of the city, and we can only get there with both Watercare and Healthy Waters working very closely together, and that relationship also applies to the Safe Networks problem as well, where we go in and actually forensically look at local networks for the condition of the wastewater network, the condition of the stormwater network, and more particularly cross connections between the two networks, which we still find from time to time. We've also got a major focus on septic tanks, so we call it our Warrender Fitness program, where we go out and we maintain the septic tanks out west and also make sure that they're working properly. We've also got some future plans for some more ambitious projects in the Manukau, so we're not just focusing on the Waitemata. We've also got a Kaipara program as well, and obviously the work we do in the Manukau will be very dependent on where we get to through the current LTP process. Our money that we spend on an annual basis is quite lumpy because some years we've got big capital programs, other years we've got a lot of much smaller initiatives, and that will very much vary from year to year. So the year that we're talking about was relatively low in comparison with previous years. We had a target of 27 mil, we had a bit over 24, but obviously we were looking for a big expenditure in the second half of the year, but the events of late January and early February caused a major distraction for Healthy Waters. One of the big important decisions that was made during this time period was the agreement with Watercare to extend the central interceptor from Greyland to Point Erin. That's going to have a massive impact on our ability to deliver those water quality outcomes in that area. It means that a lot of the stormwater separation works can be deferred to tie in with new development, and that will have a major cost-saving benefit to the program in the order of $100 million. That particular decision is very, very significant in terms of cost saving compared to the alternative. So in the Safe Networks area, we tested over 130 outlets across 25 beaches and did 8,000 residential drainage investigations, and that's really where we get a lot of our achievements around local water quality improvements. We also brought 3,000 on-site wastewater systems into compliance, and in the Kaipara Moana remediation program, lots of fencing, 550k and over 1.1 million plants. And our Regional Waterways Protection Fund co-funded 16.5k's of fencing and about 160,000 plants with rural landowners. So a good year's outcome, taking into account all of the external influences that came to play over the second half of the year. And with that, kia ora, we're happy to answer any questions.
Kia ora. Thank you both very much. Thanks to the teams far and wide who are doing this phenomenal work with mana whenua, with our communities, and with contractors as well in those big, more intense projects. I'll move, and Deputy Mayor would like to second. Member Ashby would like a question.
Kia ora, yeah, just a quick one. maybe start with a comment, sorry. Just congratulations on all the good mahi. It's really, really good report as well, so great to see. Questions just, obviously, the targeted rate funding is across the long term, so 10 years, so long-term planning. What would, given the good results to date and the trajectory, what would a cut in that funding likely look like on the ground?
Kia ora, through the chair. Assuming you're referring to both the targeted rates, I'll speak to the natural environment targeted rate first. Slightly differently to the water quality targeted rate, the natural environment targeted rate hasn't had any inflationary adjustment since it was struck up, so we have been managing increasing costs over the last 5 years. There have also been increasing pressures coming into the management of the natural environment area. So, for example, we've heard about Kalupa recently and the challenge of tackling a new marine pest. Potentially we've got quite an impactful freshwater clam that's also sort of on our doorsteps. Reduction in funding would certainly have potentially some implication on our ability to deliver our regional pest management plan, which is a document prepared under the Biosecurity Act. And as I mentioned, we've got some new obligations that have come into effect post the targeted rate being stood up, associated with the Natural Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity. So we would just need to work through whatever a changed funding level would look like and revise the program accordingly.
And the healthy waters, we've always made our key indicator as the water quality at Cox's Bay. It's probably the most polluted waterway within Auckland. And I've always had this ambition. We committed in 2018 to make Cox's Bay swimmable in 2027. And if we don't get the funding, we will be, so we're well on the way towards achieving that objective. I don't see why we can't hold a swimming contest in Cox's Bay in 2027, because that would be a wonderful celebration of a great result. But that would be that's the sort of program that would suffer under any reduction in funding, because Watercare is planning to have their central interceptor works all completed by 2026. And then with the ancillary works that support that investment, that's the way that we would achieve that clean swimming regime across the Waitemata, as well as not achieving some of our other improvement works in our other harbours and waterways. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you. And sorry, just a quick follow-up. With the natural environment one not being adjusted for inflation year on year with cost of materials and things like that, are you seeing, it looks like the budget's still relatively oscillating in the right direction. That's going to start to bite. Well, we'll be biting now, but it'll get worse over time. So I suppose I'm interested in that. I know money is tight, but if one of the objectives is our region's natural environment flourishing, I'm just mindful of a sinking cap essentially over time. So are you seeing an impact in that lack of adjustment in the actual operations or capital projects through that?
Through the chair, we have been able to manage those increasing costs over the first, I would say, 4 years of the rate being in place. Certainly over the last year, I think, like all, many parts of our business, but also external to council, we've seen increases in the cost, both materials and contractor costs. And like I said, moving forwards, we would need to consider any change to funding through our work program if it was to be decreased, and what that would look like. But yes, certainly in the last year, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to accommodate or manage those costs within the program.
Thank you. And probably to clarify, Member Ashby, there's two issues. One is the bringing back the targeted rates through this, hopefully, budget in June next calendar year. That will be bringing them back to the same quantum because they have been reduced, so they will need to be brought back. But there is the other thing. 3 years ago, we worked to bring the water quality targeted rate for inflation, but I couldn't win the argument to bring the netter within inflation every year as well. That was hoping to be a later thing. So won the argument on the water, didn't quite get there on the netter, but I think you're right that to bring that up, that there is an issue, but that'll be for the council to make that decision. One, to increase, and I know the Mayor has promised that was part of the plan, that to bring those targeted rates back, because it would be my understanding to both of you that if those targeted rates weren't at least brought back to where they were budgeted, you would just have to stop a bunch of projects and programs dead in the water. There isn't really a way out.
Well, obviously, if we've got less money, we're going to have to prioritise and not do what we had originally intended.
Cool. There's a question, I think, Councillor Darby.
Yeah, Craig, I just picked up, you suggested that in 2027 we could have a swimmable Cox's Bay. I thought that was the outcome of the Central Interceptor, yet when I asked that question at a previous forum, and it's going back a little way, I was told that Cox's Bay will continue to be contaminated because of the leachate coming out of the old landfill there, so all that park area, as you well know. So I'm happy to hear you have confidence in it being swimmable, but just tell me what the changes between the information that I got some time back, and I don't think it's more than a year ago, and making Cox's Bay swimmable and the absence of leachate?
Look, I'll have to come back to you on that leachate question, but what I can say is that water that will be going in from the pipe networks and the engineered overflows and the stormwater would be of swimmable quality. Look, the whole Central Interceptor project has always been a partnership between Watercare and Healthy Waters, and without the Healthy Waters investment, that project will not deliver the water quality outcomes, because it's not just the Central Interceptor, it's all the connectivity, getting the pipes to the Central Interceptor and looking at the overall network, because some of the combined network has been kept, some of the combined network has been separated, and it's only in its entirety that you can achieve the water quality outcomes that are required. But I will come back to you on that specific issue around the contaminated landfill leachate. Kia ora.
Thank you.
Kia ora. Just a question from me, just specifically to the presentation we had from Altea, Great Barrier, Marketing and Izzy this morning, Rachel. Is there, have you already included in our LTP the bids for that? You know, if we voted for an inflationary adjustment, would there be potential for some of that program to fit within there? Because I know that the Jobs for Nature funding was short-term from government, but we would need a continued look at that. Are there other options being investigated?
Well, certainly one of the options that we can look at through the LTP is increased investment for the natural environment targeted rate that would take into account the demand coming in from communities for some of that large landscape scale activity that they're leading. So we've got Tūmaitonga on Aotea, but also Te Korowaia Waiheke, and there's a number of mainland projects as well. You heard from Marketing this morning that they would be looking for 1.5 million as a sort of a 50% share of their $3 million project cost. So my understanding is if the Jobs for Nature funding came off stream, we'd be looking somewhere in the order of about a $17 million reduction in funding towards some of those community-led projects. You know, whether that's something we can accommodate through the long-term plan or not is something, I guess, ultimately will need to be discussed through that process.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Right, thank you both. We all got a few debating points, but we'll get you to move back. Thank you for waiting patiently for us today. Councillor Simpson, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Craig and Rachel, a huge thanks to you and your team. I thought it was a brilliant report. My question was answered within 30 seconds of you opening your mouth, which is I'm really hopeful that each one of us will see the summary local board by local board, so we can see the investment actually in our wards and communities more locally. But this is a very good regional report. It's exemplary. I sit here, Mr. Chair, and can see about 110 media statements that I'd like to make associated with this. I also am very proud to second the motion because you and I have worked, as you know, on this and taken the brunt for a long time. The point that I really want to make is we sit here and make the tough calls on rates. And an extra rate for both these things is often really, really hard to push across the line on top of the general rates, right? But there is no doubt in my mind anyway that the direct and specific result of targeted rates in a report like this really shows the community exactly how we do ring fence that funding and we do deliver, and there are quite specific and definitive outcomes that we should all be proud of. So I suppose my korero or my discussion with you as councillors is to get on top of those local board investments plans, because you need to take the lead in the and what's been delivered, because the local boards get all the glory and we make the tough decisions on the rates. So I also talk to the organisation, Megan, and say I really believe that local boards, we'll get the local board led outcomes, but I think that councillors should absolutely have a say locally on anything that goes around this. Huge amount of work, very good result. I believe personally worth the sweat and effort that we put into pushing it across the line. And I'd just like to say a huge thank to staff for what they've done. It's really great in both calls. Thank you.
Kia ora, Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Baker.
Yep, so similar, you know, two of my favourite targeted rates because they are collected regionally and spent regionally where some of our other targeted rates aren't. And so I really do want to reiterate what the Deputy Mayor said in thanking the team, and the collaboration with local boards and the collaboration with communities is what makes this work. And so local boards can top up, they can work with this funding, and then we're not delivering everything, we're just facilitating and getting out of the way, and that's why it works so much. And that's why I find that with these sorts of targeted rates, when we do that sort of work, people don't mind because they see their rates working for them. And that's the thing that we battle with all the time. So just a big thank you to the team for all of the effort. Big stuff going on in Franklin because it's so huge and at the centre of the universe. So, you know, I do really want to thank you for everything you're doing out there, team, and great work.
Thank you very much. And yeah, just briefly for me, phenomenal work again. I am concerned that these rates come back to where they were. That the work that is done here, I think the community before 5 years ago when we put these in, people thought this was a lot of this stuff was being funded and a lot of it was being done. It was not. So this is actually funding the ambition for our environment. So I just want to say thanks again to all the teams, the community, and everyone working on this, and that we need to ensure it comes back to make sure those goals are still fulfilled. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Opposed? All good. Thank you. Right. Item 15. Councillor Baker, I'll second. All those in favour? There is no extraordinary business. We'll move to, I'll move the motion to go into confidential. Deputy Chair will go second. All those in favour? Right, thank you. I'll give a couple minutes to turn off the cameras and have a stretch. Members online will need to move to the confidential link. So, yep.